Welcome to the Generation Podcast, an audio resource dedicated to a generation of young people who are committed to total surrender to God and total dependence on His power to reach the world with the gospel of Christ. This podcast is designed to strengthen and encourage through a series of Bible-based practical talks.
Welcome to the Generation Podcast. This is Kim Van Gelderen, and I am podcasting from home. Yes, I'm home for several weeks here. I've been teaching at Baptist College of Ministry for a week and several other things. And, of course, getting ready for Christmas. I'm sure you are as well. And I appreciate you tuning in to the podcast. And I just want to share a little bit with you in light of Christmas coming, just a little bit of the thought of nostalgia. Now, I know many of you are young, and nostalgia is probably not a big part of your life yet, but it might be. But I, Christmas comes around, I hear a Christmas carol, and I'm immediately transported back to the living room where, as a kid, there's the Christmas tree. I've got the Sears catalog on my lap. Now, all you millennials and Gen Zers, you may wonder what's the big deal about a Sears catalog, but ask your mom or your dad or even your grandfather, and they'll tell you that was the big deal when the Sears catalog came to your home around Christmas time. And but anyway, I've got memories from Christmas. I'm sure even some of you that are teenagers have childhood memories that are special, a certain toy you got, a certain special thing that happened at Christmas, maybe a surprise visit from grandma or whatever. And certainly we make memories at this time of year, and I hope they're all mostly good. I realize sometimes negative memories happen, but that's not my point right now. There's a certain blessing in nostalgia where you think back to exciting things that happened to you. And sometimes it's brought about by a smell. Sometimes, like I mentioned, a Christmas carol. Sometimes it's by a sight, looking at a Christmas tree in your living room. I have nostalgia of driving home from college. I know many of our college students are excited about that right now. Some already on the road, heading home for Christmas break, and just have a lot of great memories at Christmas time. But, it made me think about, as I was preparing for this podcast, it made me think about the fact there's also probably much more important type nostalgia that comes from those early moments in your Christian life, particularly when you get into teenage years and college years. You're making important decisions of faith and following the Lord, and sometimes things just really speak to your heart. And even as someone that's on the older side, than most probably listening, there are times that those moments come back to my mind, and I remember out under the stars at Bob Jones University as a student, just looking up, meeting with God for, those early times of meeting with God and realizing He was there and giving me a sense of destiny and purpose, that God had a purpose for my life, and being able to pray with great confidence and faith that God was hearing my prayer and that there were great things ahead that He was going to do that would be in my periphery, in my experience. And that was coming. And those are special times of nostalgia. And I was reading this morning in my devotional time in Genesis chapter number 28, and I came across Jacob's time there at Bethel with the ladder. And verse 15, the Lord speaking to him and said, "Behold, I am with thee, and will keep thee in all places whither thou goest, and will bring thee again into this land, and I will not leave thee until I have done that which I have spoken to thee of." That was a key time in Jacob's life. There's no doubt God was telling him, "Jacob, I've got something big for you, and it's way bigger than you can imagine." I want every young person listening to me to understand something. God has something bigger for you than you right now can imagine. He certainly can do above all things that we can ask or think. That's big, because some of us can think pretty big, but He can do greater than that. God, many times in your early steps of your Christian life, when you begin to take steps of faith, if you got saved younger, maybe later on in your teen years or college years, you begin to recognize the need for a walk with God. And you begin to search the Scriptures, seek God, begin to pray. And there's times God begins to meet with you, and He ministers to you the fact that He's got a purpose for your life. One of the nostalgic moments for me is some of the cards or letters my mom would send me. I was back in the day, of course, before email, before texting, way before all that. But my mother was faithful to write me on a regular basis. And there's a couple of verses she would often put in those letters. Just sometimes it's the reference, but I'm going to read them. I became familiar with these. And I know what she was doing. She was giving me a sense of destiny and calling and a sense of God being with me. But Deuteronomy chapter 31, verses 6 and verses 8, be strong and of a good courage. Fear not, nor be afraid of them. Talking about, of course, enemies. For the Lord thy God, he it is that doth go with thee. He will not fail thee nor forsake thee. Verse 8, and the Lord, he it is that doth go before thee. He will be with thee. He will not fail thee nor forsake thee. Fear not, neither be dismayed. You know, when I think back to those letters and reading those verses or seeing, I could still see my mother's handwriting. She had a unique handwriting. And when I think of those verses, they stir me because I know God administered to my mother to give those verses to me, to not be afraid about the future, not be dismayed, but have a great confidence that God would go with me in life. And he would make not only a pathway, but he would be with me in what he had called me to do. And certainly I have not lived it perfectly, and many times the older you get, you realize there's a whole lot better way you could have journeyed the journey. But God has always been with me, and he's always been there to enable and encourage me in what he's called me to do. He called me to do something humanly I could not do, but he gifted me. Faithful is he that calleth you, who also will do it. And he has a gift for every one of you. It may not be my gift, it might be, but you have a gifting from the Lord. That's your sweet spot, I call it. Man, when you get in that place where your gift is operating, you have a fulfillment and a power that is beyond you. You know this is what God has made me to do. And I am so thrilled. I was talking to somebody recently who loves working with people who've been in prison, and that's their sweet spot. They just love discipling and helping people who've had a rough past. God calls people to those things. He equips people to do special things. And I don't know what God has called you to do, but here at Christmas time, we think of gifts. God has gifted you. He's given you a great gift. Not only salvation. Hey, believe me, if that's all we got when we got saved, that would be far more than any of us could ever imagine without the Bible. We couldn't have imagined what God gave us at salvation. But not only did he give us the gift of eternal life, he has given us a spiritual gift, so that while we're on this planet, we have a place of service that's effective and powerful. And I want to encourage you, young person, you are making memories now, but make them good memories where you're meeting with God, seeking him. God pulls back the curtain, and you begin to realize God's real. He has a purpose for my life. When you meet with God, you cannot help but come away with some sense of destiny. I'm not on this planet by random choice. You may have gotten here in a way that seems unorthodox, maybe talking to someone who was conceived before your parents got married, or in less than optimum circumstances. But the moment you were conceived, God had a purpose for your life. You did not take him by surprise. And when you were conceived, he wants to use your life. He has a plan for you. And if you'll follow the Lord, God will do wonderful things in and through you, because that's what his will does. That's what it is. It's the greatest thing, as I have often said. So here at Christmas, when you begin to make memories and even have a little bit of nostalgia from some of those childhood memories of Christmas and the magic of it, and the Christmas morning and the excitement, all of those things are wonderful things. But I will tell you, friends, as longer I've lived life, I enjoy the nostalgia of Christmas, no doubt about it. But the greater nostalgia is remembering back in those teen years and college years where God began to meet with me, where he began to answer prayer, where he pulled back the veil. And in my heart, he ministered these words. He spoke to Moses, and he spoke here to Jacob, as I mentioned earlier in the book of Genesis. I'm going to go with you. I'm going to be with you. I'm going to accomplish in and through your life. If you'll trust me, I'll accomplish in and through your life what I created you to do. And there's a sense of purpose and destiny when God does that. And I just want each young person here at Christmas time, spend time with God, seek his face. Some of you are not in school now. You have more time. Set some time aside where you just seek the Lord. Have an open Bible. Maybe some things you want to pray about that are written on a pad so you can remember some important things you're facing in life. And begin to learn to meet with God, because those are the great memories that really come into your life that will later on will stand you in good stead. You'll realize, just like Jacob could look back and realize God promised this. God promised. Moses could look back. God, you promised you wouldn't fail me. You wouldn't forsake me. You'd be with me. And those are wonderful things. Those are wonderful gifts. And so I trust at Christmas, you'll not only have Christmas nostalgia, but more important, Christian nostalgia, meeting with Jesus Christ and knowing the reality of his presence. Well, I encourage you. I hope you have a wonderful Merry Christmas and a wonderful time and a Happy New Year. We'll certainly look forward to the next podcast in January. But in the meantime, I'll sign off as I always do. Remember, it's a total surrender to God's will in your life and a total dependence on His grace to enable you to live it. God bless.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Generation Podcast. If you've been blessed or helped in any way by this episode or any other episodes, please consider sharing what God has done in your life. Your testimony could be exactly what someone else needs to take their own step out of the boat. To share your testimony, please visit thegeneration.org/testimony. That's THEEgeneration.org/testimony.